Hi, I'm Judy Frazier, president and founder of We the Kids. We the Kids puts God back into America's history. Listening to We the Kids radio show will inspire you and your kids to have a positive American identity, clear direction, and a powerful purpose for your life. Thank you for listening.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hello, welcome to the We the Kids radio show. Today, we are interrupting our regular radio show to bring you an exclusive interview with Mr. Vince Duncan, running for Congress in the 18th Congressional District of Texas. This district includes much of downtown Houston and surrounding areas. It represents a population of more than 700,000 people. Arch and Lydia will return next week.
If it keeps on raining, love is going to break. If it keeps on raining, love is going to break. And the water gonna come and I have no place to stay. Well, all last night I sat on the lever and moaned.
Hi, my name is Daniel, and I'm a We the Kids reporter. We're here today with Vince Duncan, who is running for Congress in the 18th Congressional District of Texas as an independent. Welcome, Mr. Duncan.
Hello, Daniel, and thank you for being the host of We the Kids. We don't have any kids. We don't have a future. And so I'm definitely glad to be here speaking with you and all of my northern neighbors. Hello, glad to be here with you.
Mr. Duncan, I'd like to ask you a few questions, please.
Go ahead.
Lately, there has been an unrest in our cities caused by both Black Lives Matter and Antifa. What are your thoughts on those organizations?
What I think is this: you could start out anything with the intention of good, with the intention to do good things, but in that room is always somebody who has an ulterior motive, and they can take whatever you meant to be for good and turn it into something that it was never meant to be. So, peaceful protest is admissible, and we need peaceful protest, and so that's good. But what we don't need is people who can take your organization and turn it into something that it was never, ever meant to be. And so that's what I think with regards to Black Lives Matter. It started out one way. It started out to talk about police killings of unarmed Black people. And it was just a way for us to say that our lives matter. We realize that everybody is important, but here as Americans, Daniel, we're a group of people and we have different life experiences. So this was the initial intention of Black Lives Matter, just to say that, we don't want to die at the hands of the policemen, especially, the policemen they stand up for higher values. And we have a lot of respect for our law. We have a lot of respect for the people who write our laws. And we have a lot of respect for the men and women who wear those uniforms, who are sworn to protect us. And so we have a lot of respect for that. And in their midst, Daniel, are people who have disgraced their uniform. And so this is what the initial movement was about, to point out that we have a great country, we have great leaders, but we have people who have bad intentions, who have infiltrated the police department and they're hurting unarmed innocent citizens. And so this is what that was for. Antifa, I never was exactly sure, what that was about. I never was exactly sure if they started out the same way, but I do know that it's the same thing happening with them. They have a lot of bad actors in their midst, attacking people, burning buildings, attacking innocent citizens, innocent protesters, hurting the people that are sworn to protect us. So that's kind of my take on it. And that would be my take on it. So we should be able to assemble, and peacefully protest, but burning down buildings and turning over cars and attacking law enforcement, that was never part of it. It never should be a part of it. And so those would be my thoughts. What do you think about that?
I agree completely.
Oh, you do? Okay, then.
Yes, indeed.
All right.
I understand you were bullied as a kid, and I was wondering how it affects your perspective as an adult today.
Yeah, I don't know if you want the whole story. Do you guys want to hear the story? Or you want me to just
Yes,
stick with
indeed.
answer? You want to hear my story?
Yes.
So here's my story. When I was growing up, Daniel, there was a park right in front of my house. It was the most beautiful park. We could play baseball there. We could play football there, basketball. And of all of the sports, I liked them all, but basketball was my favorite. And I would love to walk across the street to shoot basketball. Now, my mother was like a very, very Christian lady. And when all the other kids could go play, we was kind of going to be going to Sunday school or Bible study in the evenings, just when the games got really good. But we'd be playing, and inevitably somebody would punch me, right? And then when they would punch me, I could never hit them back. And so because of my mom and her religion, she would always tell me to be the bigger person and to turn the other cheek, but to not fight anybody back. And then so she would tell me about things like that. And then so, it was getting, the older I got, the worse it was getting. And so she would tell me, just talk to them. Intelligent people don't behave like that. Be the bigger person. Just walk away from it. And so I would really want to stay and play, but I would have to walk away. And then at times it started getting really bad where when I came to play, they knew I was a church kid. And so they would all kind of just join in on talking to me really mean and punching on me. And so my mother would just tell me, I don't want you fighting. And then so she said, and if you have to, I want you to run home, right? I want you to run home. So I was always conflicted, Daniel, on whether I was going to be disobeying my mother, breaking a commandment by not listening to my mother, or, finally being able to punch somebody. So over time, I would hear my dad talking to my mom. And during the, let's say, late 60s and 70s, the parents didn't let the children hear anything that was going on with them. So my mom and dad would go in there to their room and talk, but I would be able to hear him. And I would hear him telling my mom, I'm gonna give you one more shot at doing it your way. But if it doesn't work your way, we're gonna have to make a change. But I heard him tell my mother once, you can't keep telling him to not defend himself. You're gonna break him as a man. You're gonna break his spirit if you keep telling him to never defend himself. So we tried, I went back to the park and the kids picked right up, Daniel, where they left off, screaming at me, calling me all kind of names I didn't like, and punching on me. So I took off running. On this day, my father was working 7 to 3 shift. He worked in a steel mill where they made iron and steel. It was a really tough job. He was working the 7 to 3 shift, and he saw me running from the park. And that was the thing, that was the last straw for him. He called my brother from the park, and he asked my older brother, who's 7 years older than I am, he said, why are you letting those kids beat up your brother? And then my brother said, well, Dad, they're just little kids. You want me to fight them? He said, well, no, I didn't expect you to fight the little kids, but I did expect you to teach your brother how to fight. So that was what I had been waiting to hear. So my dad was a good guy. He would never tell me to figure things out. He would give me the tools to work with. So what my dad did for me, Daniel, got me some boxing gloves, and he got me a punching bag. And I had 2 brothers. I had one brother 7 years older than I was, and one brother 3 years younger than I was. So every day, Daniel, for about 7 months, I had to take boxing lessons. Took boxing lessons in my backyard. So, and then during those times, we didn't have gyms necessarily for bodybuilding. So my father bought me some concrete blocks. So my right arm was stronger than my left arm. So if I did 50, lifted the block 50 times on my right arm, I would do it 75 on my left to make my left arm as strong as my right. So we took the boxing lessons. I learned how to throw a left punch. I learned how to throw a right punch. But for 6 or 7 months, Daniel, I had to fight both of my brothers. So either one at a time or 2 at a time, I had to box them. And so after about 7 months of boxing both of my brothers every single day when I got out of school, my dad said, okay, now you can go back to the park. And he told my mom, you can't tell him to not defend himself. Those days are over. He said, okay, you can go back to the park, Vincent, and you can play basketball. I don't expect you to start a fight. I don't expect that. However, I will never want to see you run from anybody else for the rest of your life. He said, even if you get beat up, don't run, fight them back. So I went to the park with all those boxing lessons in mind, thinking that it's been 7 months since I've been here. Just maybe, I can finally shoot basketball. So I go out there and I get on the team and we're playing, and inevitably they started right where they left off. Here comes a church boy. His mom won't let him fight back. He's a Bible thumper, and they started right where they left off. But the difference was I was able to punch back. And then I was so happy. And I had just been waiting so long to hit them back. And right when they started, I started wailing on them. And was I glad? It was years and years of punching that I was just finally lighting them up. And then they were crying, right? And then their bigger brothers used to laugh at me because I was the only one crying. Now I was punching them. And I saw their bigger brothers and them. Their bigger brothers, they couldn't fight me because I had a big brother. And their little brothers were running from me. And so what that did for me, that told me for the rest of my life, it's okay for me to be myself. It's okay for me to have my point of view, but I don't have to run from everything. And I learned early that running away from all the conflicts is not the resolution. Sometimes you have to solve it. And so it doesn't necessarily be that you need to do what I did, punching on people, but you have to get to like conflict resolution. So for me, at about 10, I picked up on conflict resolution by saying, if you punch me once, I'm going to punch you 4 times. If you punch me 4 times, I'm going to punch you 10. But the next time you see me, I won't be the first person that you decide that you need to beat up. It won't happen. So I don't have any money to give away. I can't give you my lunch money. I can't watch you beat up my brothers and sisters. Nothing. You can't take the jackets I'm wearing. You can't take the shoes I'm wearing from me. You know, it's going to be a problem. And so what I learned just then and that I carry with me now is, to fight back. Fight back at all costs at any time. And so I'm not encouraging you, Daniel, or anybody else to go to school punching on kids, but I am telling you they don't have a right to do that. And if their parents are not going to teach them, you have to. So I hope that doesn't mess you up or, scare you, but that's how I learned how to deal with it. What do you think?
That's an amazing story.
That's a true story too.
Yeah, and I find it a very inspiring story. And I hope you tell that to anyone who asks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, today, Daniel, I'm a really, really big guy. And so I grew up in a really, really small community here in Houston. It's called Groveland Terrace. Groveland Terrace, that's a community I grew up here in Houston. Very small for it to be such a big city. And let's see, in my entire neighborhood, Daniel, there may have been 50 houses in the entire community. And I knew everybody in every single house. In the whole neighborhood, it was only about 50 people, 50 houses. And so there was a guy, his name was Reginald. He did something really bad and he got sent away when I was 10 years old. And the next time I saw Reginald, I was 50, okay? And the first thing his aunt said, hey, there's Vincent. And he looked at me, he said, that's little bitty Vincent? And I was thinking, yeah, I grew. And there was nothing that said that, hey, that little guy right there, one day it's going to be 6'4". There was nothing in my DNA that would say that I was going to grow. And so sometimes when I say, I can't believe that, I grew up to be who I am right now. So yeah, that's a true story. I hope you don't forget it.
I definitely won't.
All right.
Did you have a role model growing up?
I would say my first role model was my dad. What I liked about my father is that he kind of like, if he told me something and he was very adamant about it, and if he later found out it was the wrong thing, he would come back to me and say, I made a mistake, Vincent. That wasn't the right thing to say. That wasn't the right thing to do. And that would blow my mind that my dad would say that he wasn't right about something. So he became my first role model. And then I would say after that, my mom. And then outside of my house, it was, three of them that I like to talk about a lot. I like to talk about Arthur Ashe. He was a tennis player. I like to talk about Muhammad Ali. He was a boxer. And Dr. King. So those outside of my immediate family, those were three people that I looked up to. And mostly because they changed our entire society without having an office. And that was what I found so fascinating. I said, man, these men right here, they changed the laws and none of them had an office. I can't even name the Congress people or the senators that voted on the things that they created. But those people are my mom and my dad first. Outside of my house, I was in love with Muhammad Ali, Arthur Ashe, and Dr. King. Yeah, I was amazed with those men.
Can you tell me what your background is and why you decided to run for Congress?
Yes, I can. So I like the title of your show, We the Kids. And so just let me go back just a little bit, and I'll bring you up to this. When I was a kid, I was in the Cub Scouts, then I made it to Weblo Scout, and then I made it to Boy Scout. And in that, we had like a little oath that we had a duty to God and country. And when they talked to me about that, I took that very, very seriously. So you're talking about a guy that gets into scouting when he's about 7 years old. And I stayed into it till I was about 16, 17. And so that pledge, to God, duty, and country, that meant a lot to me. And so got a chance to travel around the world and see a lot of things outside of the United States. I've been to Africa, I've been to Europe, been to Australia, been a lot of places all around the world. And every time I would get home, it didn't matter to me who the president was. My appreciation of the United States and all that it really stands for would just go through the roof. And man, I would just be so proud to be referred to as an American, especially when I would be out of the country. They say, oh, they're American. And so that really resonated with me. So how I got into politics was like this. I was going to school to be a dentist, and that's about an 8-year process. And in the middle of the first 4 years, I was working for a dentist here in Houston, and I was making teeth molds while I was waiting for the second 4 years to start to go to dental school. So while I was working for this dentist, for about 3 days in a row, he asked me, could I do this every day for the rest of my life? And so for about the first 2, I was able to try to keep a stiff chin and say, yes, yes, yes. Then on the third day, I said, no, this is not really what I want to do. And so he asked me, what is it that you really want to do? Before I could reply, he said, have you ever thought about being a mortician? They make a lot of money. I said, no, don't want to touch dead people. He said, you ever thought about being a plumber? They really make a lot of money. You should see the bills they give me. I said, no. And I said, I've always wanted to be a carpenter, though. I've always wanted to know how to build things. So right then I called my dad. I didn't dare call my mother. I called my dad and I said, Dad, would you be disappointed if I was not a doctor? And he says, you're going to have to do something. He says, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be a carpenter. So my father said, well, meet me at Sears. So I met my father at Sears. My dad bought me every tool they had in the store. Every saw, every measuring tape, every speed, square, nail guns, hoses, compressors. Then he went and found people who would teach me how to build houses. So that's what I got into. So I got into carpentry, Daniel, and home building. So what I know how to do is I know how to draw blueprints. I know how to build houses. I know how to build cabinets. I know how to make podiums. Any kind of woodworking is what I do. And in that, Daniel, I learned how to think outside the box. I learned how to create things that didn't exist. So what got me into politics was some people were trying to build some things in a little small neighborhood that we were living in, and we needed a deed restriction. So I went to the city council meetings. I talked with the city councilman. I talked with the legislators in Austin and downtown Houston, and they gave me the lessons on how to draw up a deed restriction. So I found that drawing up a deed restriction was just like drawing a blueprint. It had certain things that it needed. So I drew up the deed restriction. I presented it to my neighbors. They all signed off on it, took it downtown, gave it to the people who were in the neighborhood protection. They found a few things. I had to start all over, bring it back, and they approved it. So I wrote a deed restriction. And that was the first time I realized that as citizens, it's our responsibility to be engaged. So that was my first moment. I got into that. Then I started getting into a lot of things. And then a friend of mine told me one day he thought I would be a good congressman. And so that's a whole nother story. And so I got into politics. I knew a lot of people, got myself on the ballot to be in Congress. And that all came from starting to read the laws. And so that's my background as a carpenter, then as a neighbor and a friend and somebody who had to draw up a legal document to protect the neighborhood that I grew in. So that was how I got involved in politics right there.
Awesome.
All right.
If you don't mind me asking, do you have kids?
Well, I have a 24-year-old daughter. I have one child. I wanted to have 1,000 children, so I built this big old house. I built a huge house. I'm a carpenter, okay? So I went overboard, room after room after room. So I have one daughter. Her name is Ashton. She's a 24-year-old. She graduated from school here in Houston at a college called Texas Southern University. She's a financial analyst for one of the largest tech firms in the world. So I can't throw out their name, but she works for one of the largest tech companies in the world. And let's say just a few months back, she was living in Johannesburg, South Africa, working for an American tech firm right before they closed their border. And I went down there to see her. And so I'm a father of a 24-year-old daughter. Her name is Ashton Duncan.
Mr. Duncan, where can we contact you? Do you have a website?
My website is Vince, VinceForUS.com, VinceForUs.com. That's my website. I have a telephone number that is area code 713. The number is 252-2436, 713-252-2436. And I can be reached by email at vinceforus@gmail, VinceForus@gmail.com.
Thank you very much for your time today, Mr. Duncan. I wish you well in your campaign. I hope to speak to you again soon, possibly even as Representative Duncan.
That's the one I really want to be called, Congressman Duncan. Yeah, that's what I'm shooting for, Daniel. I'm going for it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
As it turns out, it was during the post-interview conversation that Mr. Duncan shared the most profound and heartfelt reasons for running for Congress. As he spoke, I couldn't help but to think of the similarities of his views compared to those presented in George Washington's farewell address of 1796. Stay tuned for the rest of our interview.
If it keeps on raining, levee's going to break. If it keeps on raining, levee's going to break. And the water gonna come and I have no place to stay. Well, all last night I sat on the levee and moaned. Well, all last night I sat on the levee and moaned.
Right, you have a recording, and I'm glad it's recorded too. I really am. I want the story to go on and on and on, and people to know that as Americans, we have a lot at stake. And so politically, I'm doing the same thing. I'm not just out here just talking. I'm saying, here are the tools that it's going to take for us to regain our country and the confidence back in our leaders. And these are the things we need to do. So I have a very, very, very good platform. And it's mostly, as an independent candidate, it's mostly talking to fellow Americans like you guys and just saying that when the country was started, it never was designed for two people or two groups to own every one of our seats. And so right now we have a situation where two companies, they own every one of our senators, our congresspeople, our judges, our city councilmen, our state. I mean, they own all of the seats, and it never was designed for this. And so I like them both and I respect them both, both groups. And I especially like hearing our First Lady last night talk about bullying of all things. And I was really touched by that. But it wasn't set up for these two groups to own every one of our seats. And for us as citizens that take our country back, we need people like me who are independent, can say, no, there's no such thing as me being bipartisan. I didn't join you, I joined the American people. And that's what my passion is. My passion is to say, hey, here's a tool that we have. We don't have to be here. The citizens nominated me, and I did that by petition. going door to door, sidewalk to sidewalk, picnic to picnic. I mean, anybody that was on the sidewalk, I was open season on registered voters on Houston sidewalks. And in Houston, there's a lot of sidewalks. And so I would talk to them and say, here's who I am. I'm Vincent. I want to be your congressman. Are you a registered voter? Here's my platform. Read this card. And if you like what I'm doing, sign this petition. And the Texas Secretary of State is going to add my name to the ballot. And this is what I did. I did it thousands. I did about 2,000 times to make sure I met enough people. And as I was engaging people, more and more Americans, if they have another choice, I believe they'll make it. And so I want to be that choice, independent people. I mean, and like I said, I've traveled outside the United States, and freedom and independence is an American DNA. You guys, I'm not sure about your extensive travel outside of America, but that's an American DNA, man. We really believe that we could do anything we want to. And when I've been in other countries, it was little things like taking a picture of something was against the law. I said, whoa, I thought I was at home. And I would have to remind myself, you're not in America right now, man. The freedoms that you taken for granted, they don't exist. They simply don't exist outside of the United States. And so people inside the U.S., they could be as boisterous and bad as they want to be. But once you leave here, these things don't exist. And they make you really love our country, just absolutely love America. And just say, hey, for whatever you could conjure up that you can think is not good about America, I could come up with 10 things. For every one you can come up with you don't agree with, I got 10 that make it the best place for us to be. Yeah, big time. So super patriotic. But what I figured out was that they shouldn't, these two groups, they can't own every single seat and they can't own every single politician. The people should own their seats. And that's what my politics is.
What an inspiring interview with Mr. Vince Duncan. We hope to see you next week when Arch and Lydia return to more forgotten stories of American history. Thanks for listening, and if you would like to donate to We the Kids, please visit our website at www.wethekids.us. Sign up for our newsletter and let us know what you think. Have a blessed day.
We, the people of the United States of America, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessing of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.